Hi, this is Danielle from Some Damn Good Wine. Today, I'll be talking about inoculation and fermentation daily activities, the main theme that I identified, and my favorite harvest items. We have processed the grapes. The grapes and the juice have cold soaked within its vessel, and we have gotten back our chem panel from the lab. So now it's time to actually do some water adds and acid adds if necessary, and then actually begin inoculation. And so just before we get started, what is inoculation? Inoculation literally is the process that actually starts fermentation. So it's the process that actually starts taking that juice into making it wine. So we're adding yeast and we're adding nutrients or whatever to the wine, and the first step to actually even do that is that we would actually end up turning the tank up. Fermentation can't actually start when the tank is cold or when the juice is cold. So we would turn the tank up to be like around 75 degrees, and just like a thermometer that you would kind of like use in your house, right? Like your thermostat, the jacket of the tank would then start to rise up based to like what it is that you sat it on your probe. So we would turn the jackets up to be above 75 degrees, and then we would end up doing our water adds and acid adds if necessary. For the water and acid adds, we would use the sump for adding large gallonage to the tank. So what we would do is we would fill it up to about maybe like 80 gallons. And then if we needed to like add, hundreds and hundreds of gallons, which sometimes we did, then of course we would fill it up to 80 and then release it into the tank and keep filling it up to 80 until we actually ended up making it to the gallonage that we needed to make. While adding water, another team member would then be prepping the inoculation mixture. And so this would consist of us either adding an advanced rehydration nutrient called Go Firm Sterile Flash. This would be used to kind of like get the yeast going. We also, for this particular kind of mixture, we would also end up adding juice from the tank. And then we also would end up adding yeast. And so depending on the flavor profile that the winemaker was looking for and wanted to accentuate in the wine, we would use a certain type of yeast. For example, there are yeast that help to produce like more lighter, feminine style body type wines versus yeast that can just bring all of the fruit forwardness or whatever like out of the flavor profiles like of the grapes. We also would use another technique that would kind of mimic using native yeast. So the yeast that just literally exists within the fact that we're using grapes. We would use something called Biodiva. Biodiva actually mimics native yeast, but it's commercial yeast. And what it does is that it actually ends up producing esters that actually enhance fruitiness and produces compounds that can increase your mouthfeel, your volume, the roundness, all of these different things that you would kind of read on the back of a label. Like I've actually written about it in my blog post about like the kind of the things, the sensations that you get as you're actually tasting the wine. Biodiva can help to also do that as well. We would leave the Biodiva in the tank if we chose to go this direction. We would leave the Biodiva in the tank for about 2 days to kind of like let it start doing its thing, like said, like mimicking kind of what it is if you would let wine just naturally do its thing. And we would leave it in a tank for about 2 days, and then essentially what we would do is then also come back and add the main yeast, and that would start to kick off. But with all of that would help to like add complexity to the wine. Depending on the winemaker's harvest plan, additional things may be added or whatever to the tank during fermentation. So for example, bentonite may be added to white wine to add more clarity to the wine. So to like get some of like all of that yumminess that you don't necessarily want to see in the bottom of the bottle, it would kind of get that out. Bentonite is kind of like a clay. So it essentially, you would pour it in, it would kind of collect everything, it would fall to the bottom. And then when you ended up racking off of the lees and the bentonite, you would end up having clear wine. The bentonite would be left kind of in the bottom of the tank. Fun fact for that, bentonite, we would have to end up making sure that we actually caught the lees and that clay, because the thing is that if it ended up falling or going into the drain, once it hardened, it could actually end up messing up your pipes. For red wine, the winemaker, just depending on the harvest plan, may actually add more tannin to the wine. So we actually ended up doing that for a couple wines that we were taking care of, where we added FT Rouge Soft. This actually helps promote color and mouthfeel, and then also it can help like bring the fruit forward as well. After doing the inoculation mixture on the tank, the next day we would actually start pump overs and or punch downs, just depending on the style of the tank. So what is a pump over and a punch down, and then why do we do it? So why pump overs and punch downs are activities that actually help to mix the tank during fermentation. Both help you with cap management. You need to wet the cap to prevent it from drying out, which can help to like lead to loss of color or even the spoilage of your wine. You also do it for color and tannin extraction in red wine. So the color pigments and tannins are extracted from the grape skins, which contribute to the structure and the complexity that you get within the wine. Punching down and doing pump overs also provides oxygen. The grapes are locked up in a tank, right? And in order to kind of keep fermentation going, you need to introduce oxygen a couple times a day to make sure that the health of the fermentation like continues to stay in that way. And then also temperature control. Like I mentioned, the tank needs to be hotter in order for fermentation to continue to kick off, but then also for you to be able to like sustain and make it through fermentation as well. Breaking that cap up helps to circulate the heat throughout the tank, which, like I mentioned, is actually needed during fermentation. So pump overs, how do we do it? We end up using the large pump, and we use 2-inch lines and an irrigation system. The irrigation system is attached to the lid of the tank, and then we end up connecting the irrigation system to the 2-inch lines, which is also connected to the pump and the tank. The wine comes out of the tank from the racking valve and then travels through the pump, and then the wine then goes back up to the top, and then it's spread all over the top of the cap via that irrigation system. For punch downs, we use this really long stainless steel paddle that weighs about 20 pounds. We would take that paddle to the top of the tank, and we would do this on open top tanks and portable tanks. And then essentially we would literally just lay the weight of our body on top of this paddle to start punching that cap down. At the beginning, it can be super hard because the cap like forms and it's about like, could end up being maybe about this high. And you literally have to use the legit force of your body to actually like punch it down to make sure that you actually end up seeing juice, and then continue to keep moving your way around the tank to make sure that you fully end up breaking that cap up. We would complete both of these twice a day. The second pump over or punch down would need to be performed about 6 hours later. And you would perform these activities each day until the wine actually finished fermentation. Or until the wine like started to end its fermentation. So you would stop when the wine actually got to like 5 brix, and it would actually start fermentation way higher. So it would start fermentation like at 26, 27 brix. And so if you can see, like, it would essentially, you would punch down until it got down to around the number like 5 or 6. After inoculation and during pump overs and punch downs, we would also feed the tank with nutrients. The tank would get fed with the first and second feeding, and for the first feeding, it would happen after a 2 to 3 brix drop, and then the second feeding would happen after a 3rd brix drop from the original brix number. So for example, if we brought in a Pinot Noir at 27 brix, the tank would need food when the brix level dropped to about 25 to 24 brix. The tank would then need food again after the brix dropped by a 3rd, which would mean that a 1/3 of 27 would be around 19 to 18 brix. For all of the red and the majority of the white wines, we use the same nutrient, which was called fermento. For some white wines, we would use nutrients that would also bring out more fruity and floral notes in the wine, or nutrients that would actually enhance the more tropical and citrus notes and increase mouthfeel. So just depending on, again, the harvest plan, that would also change. The crush pad in the barn definitely gave off smells during this phase. We definitely were getting a little bit of rotten eggs, which is H2S. And we were also able to smell wine that gave off a little bit of acetone or nail polish remover during fermentation, which let us know that that tank ended up having a little bit of VA in it, or ethanol acetate. We also were able to smell a little bit of bruised apple a little bit in some of the wine during fermentation. And that is called acetaldehyde. And then the most common smell I think that I also smelled was mac and cheese. But I would normally end up getting that as we were kind of like mixing the nutrients, and even some of the mixing a lot of time the nutrients together. It would definitely give off kind of like a nutritional yeast type smell. So once the tank was complete with fermentation, we would then let the wine settle in the tank until it's time to move the wine off the skins for red wines, or move off the lees for white wine. For red wine, the wine would stay on the skins until right before the wine started to taste bitter or astringent. For white wine, the wine would stay on the lees for about a few weeks. Note, this is all dependent on the type of wine that the winemaker is trying to make. Wine can be left on lees for days, weeks, months, and or years, just depending on the style that you're trying to make. My favorite thing during this phase was my pain management regimen and self-care. I did a CBD and THC foot bath every night. I used topical THC called Liquid Flower, and then I also used BioFreeze to help with just like my ailments and all of that. Between these 3, I was able to moderate my pain levels in my hands, my wrists, my arms, my shoulders, my feet. I also got CBD sports massages every 2 weeks to help stretch and then just to kind of like further relax my body for recovery. And then lastly, I would also go and I would get my nails done. That's something that I never stopped doing. Also got my feet done. It actually helped to like sustain my nails because you're putting your hands in so much water and chemicals that it can destroy like your actual nails. I did dip and gel on my nails, and essentially was kind of able to keep up with them and not have like my actual natural nail deteriorate. The main theme that I picked up during this phase was persistence, precision, and finesse. We had to be persistent during this time because we were performing this daily activity, and it literally was like a workout that you had to do several sets of over and over again on each tank. The irrigation system was stainless steel, and that weighed about 15 pounds. The 2-inch lines weighed about 15 to 20 pounds. And then the punch downs that we had to do was literally like this, like the most intense push up that you were doing kind of like suspended in the air while balancing on a ladder. Sometimes we had to actually be performing some of these activities 9 to 10 feet in the air on the ladder, or even like balancing on top of a tank. For punch downs, we had to be, like I said, either on the side of the tank or on top of the portable tanks. We were having to complete all these activities while also like processing grapes. And these were our longest days at the winery. The more focus that we had with persistence, precision, and finesse, the less mistakes that we made, and the more efficient we were throughout the winery, which helped us to somewhat get home like kind of quicker. Overall, it was a push to get through this stage, and it overlapped across multiple stages, which was super intense. The feeling of achievement to complete this phase was like no other. It was like my mind, body, and soul took the biggest deep breath of relief and gratitude that we actually had made it through it. I hope that you found this helpful, and thanks, and be well.